on Sunday, the Chargers lost an extremely tough game to the Jacksonville Jaguars, 38-10. And although the game was extremely brutal to watch, there is still some things that we learned. So I want to go through the 5 things that we learned in the Chargers versus Jaguars Week 3 game and what the Chargers can do from what we've learned to improve and move on throughout the rest of the year. So, if this is your first time on this channel and you enjoy this content, please give me a like and subscribe. Truly means the world to me. I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year, and I cannot do that without your guys' help. But let's not waste any more of your time. Let's go ahead and get right into this. The 5 things that we learned about the Chargers after Week 3 against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, there are a lot of things to cover here, and I'm sure there's plenty more than 5, but that's kind of what I like to stick with because I don't want the video going to an hour long, as I could probably already make it go to about 40 minutes by itself. But before we get into this, I do want to mention once again that last week was my first time doing a film recap, and I will be continuing that this week. Now, I'm not sure what day it will be coming out, but there will be a film recap for the Chargers vs. Jaguars, in which I will pick apart individual plays, what I think Chargers did good, where they messed up, and all that. So if you'd like to check that video out, feel free. It will be up the next few days. But let's go ahead and get into these 5 things. So first things first, so many injuries. That is the most obvious thing here, and that is the first thing I want to talk about. Last week, we saw Corey Linsley go out at the start of the second half with a knee injury, and he would end up missing this game entirely. We also would see Trey Pipkins got injured and would miss a good portion of last week's game, but he would fully participate this week, as well as Justin Herbert having his rib cartilage injury, and although he was full go for this week's game, it definitely did hold him back slightly. Now, this week, we would see Herbert and Pipkins suit up, but Donald Parham would still sit out. Corey Linsley, Keenan Allen, as well as J.C. Jackson would all sit out for the game. Now, sadly, it wouldn't end there. This week, we would see Joey Bosa go down with an injury, and he is now quoted to be week to week with a groin injury, and we're not sure when he will be able to return. It could be 4 weeks, it could be more, it could be less, but he is expected to miss this week's game against the Texans. Now, we also would see later in the game Rashawn Slater go down with a bicep injury at 12 minutes left in the third quarter. Now, the worst case scenario did occur, and Rashawn Slater is likely to miss the entirety of the season due to this injury, right after being an incredible Pro Bowler in his rookie year. And after finally getting some things rolling with Jalen Guyton getting his first big reception of the year, he would end up going down with his own injury, tearing his, I believe, ACL, potentially one of the other CLs, and is going to miss the entirety of the season by himself. So, and not to mention, he did that in the last 2 minutes of the game, which is just like, that's terrible. You were just trying to ice the game and just get out of there, and he ends up coming down with that big injury and is out for the rest of the year, especially with the wide receiver room that's kind of beat up already. That's tough to see, but some good news could come out of that. Not good news because you don't want to see someone get injured, but a fan favorite could potentially make this lineup because of that injury. Now, Kenneth Murray would also go down with the injury, but he would end up returning to the game, so no big worry there. It just seemed like it was lost some air and got the wind knocked out of them. But with all these injuries, the Chargers now have 1 Pro Bowler out for the season in Rashawn Slater, 1 Pro Bowler week to week in Joey Bosa, 3 Pro Bowlers who have missed games in Keenan Allen, Corey Linsley, and J.C. Jackson, 1 Pro Bowler who is day-to-day in Justin Herbert, another player for this team that could be very good that's day-to-day in Donald Parham, and has missed games already, as well as 1 player who is out for the rest of the season with Jalen Guyton. Not only that, but we've seen guys like Kenneth Murray go out with injury for a short time. Trey Pipkins go with injury for a short time. Even Justin Herbert is beat up pretty well. This team has already went through so many injuries just through 3 weeks, and it seems like the curse is kind of continuing, as some fans would like to suggest. Now, let's kind of get past that sad part of things and move on to another sad part of things, and that is going to be point 2 in the things we learned, and that's the Chargers were dominated by the Jaguars' rushing attack. Last year, it was a big struggle for the Chargers, and it seemed like the Chargers did a great job at maintaining that, preventing both the Raiders with Josh Jacobs, as well as the Chiefs, to quite a bit lower numbers and looking quite well in the defensive rushing game, being top 5. Now, in my game preview, I said slowing down James Robinson as well as the Jaguars' run game was a huge key to success for the Chargers. Sadly, though, it seems like the Chargers could not do what was needed to be done to slow down the Jaguars. Not only did James Robinson go crazy with a season high of 100 rushing yards as well as a touchdown for 50 yards and 5.9 yards average, which is already a very high number, but even with James Robinson doing that well, it wouldn't stop there. We also would see Travis Etienne Jr. I'm butchering that name. I don't know why I'm blanking on how to say it right, because I heard it a million times during the game with how well he was playing. I know I said that wrong. My apologies. But he also got 45 yards on his own. Even with the Chargers doing a great job at the goal line in preventing scoring and forcing field goals and stopping them on 3rd down and 4th down, they would fail a 4th and 1 at the 50-yard line. That was a completely blown run stop there in 4th and 1 that would go for a 50-yard touchdown to James Robinson, in which he wouldn't be touched by a single Chargers defender. Just worst case scenario right there is 4th and 1, you're just trying to stop a 4th down, and it turns to a 50-yard touchdown. That's just terrible. In total, the Chargers defense allowed 151 rushing yards to the Jacksonville Jaguars. After being a top 5 defense against the rushers through 2 games, the Chargers fell all the way out of the top 10. Brutal news to see. Now, with the Chargers defense having a lot of weapons, it is likely that long-term they will be a top 10 defense in the rushing, but Robinson definitely showed that the Chargers may not have fixed all of their issues in regards to the run defense. But the next thing is going to be on the same side of the ball, but a different aspect, and that's in the passing game. And the Chargers pass rush that was looking stellar through the first 2 weeks was completely shut down. Through 2 weeks, the Chargers looked like the best pass rush duo in the league with Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. But the Jaguars were able to completely shut down the pass rush, not allowing a single sack. Now, Joey Bosa did go down with injury, as mentioned earlier, in the first quarter, which definitely limited the Chargers' ability to get after the quarterback, but you still had Khalil Mack and some pretty solid backups that weren't able to get anything done. Even though the Bolts were not able to attain a sack, they still got a alright amount of pressures, with 8 pressures, putting them at a 20% pressure rate per each dropback, which is just slightly below the league average at 23% per pressure per dropback. Being the average for the league, just being slightly below that, especially after losing Joey Bosa, is not terrible numbers, but again, with an incredible pass rush like it looked like through 2 weeks, the fact that they were held to only 8 on a Jaguars offensive line that isn't that incredible outside of Brandon Sheriff, it's a little bit tough to watch in total. Mack was also a complete non-factor through most of the game, not only not attaining a sack, but only having 4 tackles. Although Chris Rumph was getting some pressure, again, no sacks and limited tackles. Even Derwin James, who is a stellar guy at, shocking the offense and getting in there, was really only able to put pressure on Trevor Lawrence once, and at that point, Trevor Lawrence was already on the scramble out of the pocket, so it wasn't even a sack in that regard. Now, on the other side of the ball, on the Chargers offense, it was a terrible start as well as a terrible finish for the Chargers offensive game. Not only have the Chargers been unable to score more than a few touchdowns in each of the 2 games prior, having just 22 points, they were completely shut down this game, being held to only 10 points. After being the favorites entering this game, likely being able to score 28 points as suggested by many of the coverage analysts, the Chargers took a nap and scored 10 points instead of 28. Now, not only were the Chargers unable to put any points up on the board, they struggled at getting any yards for the most part through most of the game. The first 2 times the Bolts touched the ball, they were forced to 2 back-to-back 3-and-outs. Soon after, the Chargers would be pinned deep in their own side of the field, and on pretty easy dish that most people should be able to catch, Sony Michel would lose the ball that Justin Herbert dished off to him, and it would bounce up in the air and be intercepted. On the very next drive, the O-line would drop off for Justin Herbert, and he would be sacked. Not only sacked, but it was a strip sack, and it would be a fumble, and the Jaguars would also get that. So through the first 4 or 5 times Jaguars touched the ball, they got absolutely nothing to show for it. Now, the Chargers wouldn't get their first down until the second quarter, which is just terrible in and of itself. Now, the first play the Chargers had in the Jaguars' territory wasn't even until 8:30 left in the second quarter. Now, the Chargers would end up scoring on this drive with 8 passes, 1 rush, 7 of 8 for completion, 75 yards, and a touchdown to Mike Williams, 15 yards for his only reception of the entire game. But for pretty much the rest of the game, it seemed like nothing was really working for the Chargers. The Chargers also have Austin Eckler, who is a Pro Bowl caliber running back that was just completely erased from the game plan, it seems. Through the first couple possessions, it looked like he was going to be a key part, and that was what a lot of people hoped, especially with Justin Herbert's injury and not a lot of weapons with Keenan Allen out, and it seemed like he was nowhere to be found. Sony Michel would take most of the carries up until the last few drives, even the last drive in which Austin Eckler would get most of his carries and receptions in the last drive of the game, just trying to pick up a few yards here and there. In total, the Chargers would have 4 3-and-outs while going 5 of 13 on third down, below 50%, and scoring 10 points. Definitely a huge offensive misstep, and I know a lot of people are pointing fingers at Joe Lombardi. I will admit I have done very similar, but I think what I'm going to end up doing is a video in and of itself on the Chargers offense and what has went wrong, and deep dive into the film itself, the players, and what's been going on, and see if it is truly Joe Lombardi's fault, or if this is more of like a team situation where either the Chargers are failing or the other team is just able to game plan very well around them. Now, the final thing that we learned for the Chargers is the fact that not only did they lose in the major categories, but there was failures on the small things as well. Yes, the Chargers had fewer points and fewer total yards, and those are by far the biggest factors in securing a win, but some may not realize how the small details can help you win a game that you wouldn't think you could win with being down on yards. Now, some of these small details are, for example, efficiency on certain downs, your special teams, penalties, time of possession, first downs, and all of that. The Chargers would lose every single one of those categories. The Chargers would get dominated in all of those stats. The first one, Jaguars would dominate in the first downs 25-16, as well as total plays being 75-58. And the Chargers would almost get doubled in time of possession, 21-33 to 38-27. And when you have the ball for more time, it likely means that you're getting more first downs and being able to score more points, and that's exactly what the Jaguars were doing to the Chargers. The Jags would also have a better efficiency on both third and fourth down, going 8 of 15 to the Chargers 5 of 13, as well as 2 of 3 on fourth down to the Chargers 0 of 2 on fourth down. Now, it doesn't end there, as even with the Chargers were getting dominated, they still shot themselves in the foot quite a bit, having 7 penalties for 54 yards, not including the fact that some of those plays were big plays that the Chargers would have had that were taken back due to these penalties, while the Jaguars only had 2 penalties for 10 yards in the entire game. Now, the Chargers were also forced to punt 4 times and only forced the Jaguars to punt once, which is kind of the special teams thing. And although returns weren't a huge factor in this game, it still was definitely a struggle overall for all of these small details. Now, with all of that being said, the 5 things that we learned, we have went through them. And most of these weren't good. As a matter of fact, none of these were good things that we learned, but there are things that you can build on and improve and fix and work through, and hopefully the Chargers will be able to do that. But what do you guys think? Comment down below what you think needs to be changed, what the biggest factor in the Chargers' loss was, and how worried are you for the rest of the year? Now, I will admit, it didn't feel good watching the game, but knowing the Chargers, they're going to drop a couple games like this here and there. That's just what always happens, and they're always going to be bit by the injury bug. But I still believe in this team, and I think even worst case scenario, Justin Herbert can bring this team to a positive record. So if this team can get healthy, if Joe Lombardi and the offense can get everything glued and working together, and this defense can, stay looking good like they did through the first 2 games as well as the first half of this game, I think this team can still be true contenders when healthy. I mean, everyone sees that this team really does have something going. They just need to make it all work together, which is something that, a lot of teams struggle with from time to time. Now, there's been times where the Chargers have started 0-4 and made the playoffs. The only team to ever do that. There's been times that the Chargers started 1-2 and won 11 games in a row and were one of the best teams in the league. And with how great this Chargers team does currently look, I think they could put themselves in a situation to do that. But again, what do you guys think? Comment down below. I'd love to have a conversation with you guys. If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. Truly means the world to me. And like I mentioned at the top of the show, I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year. I cannot do that without your guys' help. So every single one of you is noticed and appreciated. And as always, I hope it touched them today. Hope it made you smile. Hope it made you laugh. Something that's really important to me affects most day in a great way, because every single day can be a great day if we all just put in the effort. And as always, you guys all be safe out there.
But something deep inside won't let me quit. I swear that